This is a project-made news analysis, the Rambeau Report for my people. First, I want to thank you for watching the show. I call this the show. I've reached the stage where I don't even talk about, I don't give you the name. You know the name of it. It is the show, okay? Let's talk about education for a little bit. We're in the summer now, and if you plan ahead for yourself or your children, but especially for the next generation, you're getting psychologically ready for them to go to school, okay, in the fall. And of course, in the news, on TV and on the radio, there are a lot of interviews with the new Detroit Public Schools Community District school superintendent about what a job he's going to do, et cetera, and all the other blase about Detroit Public Schools. Now, what is happening is your mind is being framed. Your thoughts are being framed to focus on otherness, to take responsibility, guidance, leadership for something that belongs to you. I mean, your education and the education of your children, the education of your community is our responsibility. That's what I talk about all the time. I don't much talk about what they're doing. I talk about what we're doing. I mean, there's self and other. And any conscious, rational person or group or people or neighborhood, they talk about self. And they observe the other. They depend on self. They relate to the other. We, unfortunately, through 250 years of slavery and 150 years of Jim Crow oppression and mass incarceration, and the last, say, 40 or 50 years of relative political involvement and empowerment, have been dumbed down to the point where we look to the other instead of to the self. Not only here, but across the entire planet, Africa included. Maybe Africa especially, at least in terms of leadership. So that when we talk about education, we should look to the self. Now, in terms of education, regardless, in a complex society, you have to recognize that there are multiple facets of education. The public schools, Detroit Public Schools in this case, are not the only educator of you and your children. Plain and simple. Like I've said many times in the past, any complex society has at least 7 pillars or foundations that the entire society rests on, okay? I've discussed that with you many times. The same thing occurs with the education of the people. And in this case, I'm talking about the education of young people, okay? It rests on several ingredients, and you should balance them out, okay? You should not look at the Detroit public schools or any public school system as the educator of black youth or black people. And to do so and to give them any kind of particular credence or value or judgment or excellence for that matter is ridiculous if you think about it, or if you study the history of education in any society. For example, earlier on, I mentioned slavery. The condition of slavery that black folk in this country was subjected to. 250 years of it, okay? Now, what was one of the key tenets of northern and southern states during their time? In the South, it was against the law to educate black folk, to teach black folk how to read, black people, black young people or adults. It was against the law. People were punished. White people were punished. Some whites thought For example, out of quote unquote the goodness of their hearts, they would teach some blacks, their favorite blacks, house slaves to read. I mean, some blacks had aptitude for figures, for accounting. They teach them do their books. They teach them to read the Bible, so-called Christians. But it was against the law. I mean, they punished whites for teaching black folks to read, much less do numbers. Oh, I mean, how can you cheat a person successfully without rebellion if they know how to count? Because after all, everything is denominated in cash, in money. So, sure. So the same thing occurs now. It has only been waltzed over. So please understand, in education, there's the responsibility of students, family, community, teachers, the culture. All of these impact education. So please do not fall once again for the expectation, the hope, the dream that the Lone Ranger has come to Detroit Public Schools in the guise of a school superintendent is going to save you or your children. This has been another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambeau Report for my people.
The Saturday Irregulars, an urban think tank, meets weekly from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. across the street from Belle Isle at the northeast intersection of East Jefferson and East Grand Boulevard. No leaders, no elections, no officers, no dues, no in-groups. Thinkers and students are welcome. A choice, not an option.
This is another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambeau Report for my people. Let me continue the discussion about the education of black youth, the education of black adults, the education of our community. We are in a time in history when information is available worldwide, virtually free of charge. The computer and the internet has made virtually all of the accumulated information and knowledge of all the centuries, the last 6,000 years, available at the push of a button. I've mentioned this to you several times in the past. Universities, as we know them now, in their current configuration, as the institutions that have a monopoly on information and knowledge and education, it's over. They're obsolete. They will only become more obsolete as the internet and technology, computer technology, increases and improves. Even the state, for example, of New York, has made university education, and this is being involved with the institution. They've eliminated tuition. That Michigan hasn't done it is just to show you how retrogressive state of Michigan and the institutions of higher education in this state, starting with the University of Michigan, going to Michigan State and into Wayne State University, how retrogressive they are. I mean, plainly, without a doubt. Education, there should be no charge for education, especially in this day and age with the computers and the internet. That is plain. The idea that the Detroit Public Schools Community District should be the purveyor of education for our community and responsible for it is ridiculous. And anybody who sits up in an interview or in front of a group of parents, teachers, and thinks that that institution is the be-all and end-all, it's just absolutely, it's really sort of naive or silly or retrogressive or looking in terms of the past. We're all caught in the past. And the older we are, the more we're trapped by it. Because obviously, for example, when you get to be as old as I am, you obviously have more of your past than you have of your future. And one of the things about that is, if you evaluate your past, you have hindsight, which is 20/20. And so one of the things that's very plain to someone like me is that education does not rest in institutions and practices of the past. Education and continuing intellectual development rests in the present and on into the future. Okay? So that you must expect and really recognize, when I say that, parents are responsible for their children's education. The extended family is responsible. The community is responsible, and all of the institutions of that community, the library, the museums, the churches, businesses, and the media. So that it is clear to me, having and still being a teacher, okay, a student, a media person, I was going to say a philosopher, but I'll leave that one out, a pundit and a critic, that it is clear to me that at this stage of history, to look at the Detroit public schools or any public school system as the prime educator for Black youth or the Black community is ridiculous. I say that openly and clearly. I say that empirically. Okay? For example, as you know, recently, we put on a program at the Museum of African American History in the classroom. They have classrooms. They have a freedom school. And it talked about the 1966 Northern High School walkout and freedom school. Essentially, the 1966 Northern High School rebellion. Now, there's been a lot of conversation, and it's going now, that this is the year of the 67 rebellion. The 66 school rebellion has been virtually ignored. Why? Because the 66 school rebellion was organized. Students organized it. Adults, teachers, principals organized it. They had an institution that took them in where they developed the freedom schools. They had classes. They had teachers, they had discipline, they had a curriculum, they had a plan. The 67 rebellion had none of those, okay? So what does the propaganda system do? It focuses on the 67 rebellion and forgets about the 66 educational rebellion, which nearly, if you study the history, which nearly expanded and extended to citywide, all of the Black high schools in the city. And it's only because they came and negotiated was this avoided. So that anybody who thinks that from 1966 to 2017, the system has changed is anti-historical. This has been another Project B.A.I.T. News Analysis, the Rambeau Report for my people.
Hi, I'm Divine with the Generation X Millennial For My People report. I would like to thank David Rambeau and Will Amos for the continuous opportunities to grow and to develop my skill sets and actually use them and invest them into our community. And I also like to thank them for the challenge that they always present to me to go deeper and to talk more about what affects us as a people. With that being said, the topic I'm going to talk about today is very close to home and it's intense, and that's rape. Rape within our community. How it came about, how it's perpetuated, and what are some things that are happening to help heal this burden or baggage that continues to exist in our community. There are many levels of rape, and I would say it's the politics of rape. And with that, we have to first understand what rape is. And so I was able to come up with a definition. Rape is a crime of power, domination, and control that uses sex. Rape is not only a crime in a legal sense, but an evil before humanity. Rape is an act of extreme violence and aggression in which the strong overpower the weak. Now, when I came across this definition, I automatically went back to the forced indentured servitude of us as a people and the whole culture around the plantation system and how this particular definition played out among women and men. Women were raped not just by the owners of the plantations, but the slave drivers, the field people, so on and so forth. You know, the whole hierarchical structure. And then on top of that, women were forced to breed, and that's a form of rape as well, regardless if it was a counterpart of their community. And then the question now becomes is, what other types of rape came from out of this plantation culture? How did it emerge into our community? Well, you have intoxicated rape. And when I say intoxicated rape, I'm talking about how you have men and women who drink and they tend not to be able to hold their alcohol. And so they overindulge. And then what happens is that they're surrounded by people that take advantage of them, or individuals that take advantage of them based on them not being awakened or conscious of what's happening. And then they awaken not understanding that they have been gang raped or have been taken advantage of by just one person. Another type of rape that you have are parental rape. You have a lot of parents that have openly, and we call it molestation, that have raped their children from early ages, from 4 years old, 9 years old, teenage, some even going into adulthood. And then on top of that, you have the date rape. The date rape is where you have individuals who pretend to be interested in you, whether it's a man or a woman, and when you're not looking or paying attention, they'll slip a drug. They call it a Mickey into your drink. And what ends up happening is you end up losing sight of what's going on, and they take advantage of you in ways that you can't even imagine. And a lot of people who have experienced the date rape experience of the drug have really not come back mentally, because sometimes it takes away your mental perception, your mobility, and just your ability to work and be part of society. Now, as I continue on, the language of rape has a really intense sound to it, in a sense. Most people, when they associate with rape, they think of victim. But then you have those individuals who actually were the rapists, and they tend to look at the individual with terms like hoe, loss, disgusting, unbelievable. And then you have those individuals that have heard the stories, and they may be kins or friends to these individuals, and they're just place it as the person being lost and confused, and they really didn't know what was happening. Now, Currently, Wayne County last year issued a program to solve over 10,000 rape cases that they had in the backlog. And Erica Badu last year in July, she donated all her concert proceedings to help support this. However, what we got to understand, Generation X and millennials, is that when we're doing recreational activities, and it may be someone that you like or someone that doesn't like you back, you in no way have the right to take their power in an undercover way by drugging them or by coercing them into believing that it's all right for them to do something that is inappropriate or goes against their values. And we also have to think about how we will heal from this as a community. As a survivor, I have come to understand and acknowledge what has happened to me on multiple levels. And I've come to understand that it's important to talk to not just anybody, but individuals that are willing to empower you, encourage you, and to present heartfelt truth to you so that you can understand that it's not your fault and that you have the power to continue to move on and trust people who may become your future mate. And in addition to that, it's important for you to continue to learn from reading books, doing workbooks, but also by communicating with other survivors and not being ashamed. Because when you carry shame, it detracts from us building as a community. And for those individuals who do this raping and think that it's common or natural, I challenge you to think about this. Think about it very deeply because it has an economic impact on our community. It prevents us from reaching to our higher selves and creating streams of income and being able to buy in and support Black-owned businesses, all based on the ability of a dysfunctional mindset, a lack of leadership trust that we are allowing to go on to the next generation. So I challenge you. I am Divine with the Generation X Millennial For My People report.
The Saturday Irregulars, an urban think tank, meets weekly from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. across the street from Belle Isle at the northeast intersection of East Jefferson and East Grand Boulevard. No leaders, no elections, no officers, no dues, no in-groups. Thinkers and students are welcome. A choice, not an option.
Little Rock Baptist Church. Come and receive your blessings at the historic Little Rock Baptist Church, 9000 Woodward Avenue, 313-872-2900. Worship services are 10 a.m. and Sunday school 8:45 a.m. Enjoy an experience that will warm your heart and feed your spiritual soul. Little Rock Baptist Church.